Hi everyone, welcome to Dennis Deep Cuts, the 67th installment of this fine YouTube series. Today we're going to talk about the best punk and hardcore albums of 2024. Let's see what happens. A day late, a dollar short per usual. I am sorry about that. 2024, what a year for music. And what a year for punk rock and hardcore. It was really difficult to whittle this down to 10 albums, almost impossible. And per usual on lists like these, I'm sure this list will change in a couple of years, might look completely different because I haven't heard all the records that came out in 2024. But yeah, I think I came up with a pretty good list. A couple of things before we head into the action. If you sent me records, especially during the summer when I was recovering, thank you so much. It really, really means a lot to me. If you want me to listen to music, I think the best bet is to send me your vinyl, because then I will give it a spin. And it really means a lot to me when people or record labels send me music. It makes me very, very happy, and it makes this YouTube channel possible. Speaking of sending me things, I got this in the mail the other day, the Ancient Artifacts book. If you don't know what this is a fantastic book. It's like flyers and posters and memorabilia from the early days of hardcore, specifically maybe like a lot of it is the DC hardcore scene. Brian put this book together. I've been at his house in Jersey a couple of times, so I've seen a lot of this stuff in real life, and it's been a blast going there with my friends from Fake Name, Michael Hampton and Brian Baker, because they were there. And I've heard a lot of these stories, and this book is wonderful. If you are a hardcore nerd, such as I, you should check this book out. It's just wonderful, especially if you love early 80s hardcore. Check it out. So thank you, Brian, for sending this to me. It really means a lot. And then the last thing, the best hardcore album of 2024 was, of course, the new Venice Casino record, without a doubt. That's probably the best record to come out this year, all categories. It's been up for a couple of weeks. I'm super happy with the way it turned out. It sounds great, the songwriting is great, the playing is fantastic, production sounds fabulous, the artwork turned out amazing. We are not on streaming yet. That might change, but as of now we're not. We have a couple of videos on YouTube if you want to check out the music. If you haven't heard it, you can order a copy of the vinyl from our Bandcamp, or Clouds Hill has a store, and the good news is that they have a store in the US as well. So all my friends across the Atlantic, if you want to order the record and you don't want to pay ridiculous postage prices, check out the Clouds Hill store. Venice Casino, best album in the universe ever to exist. All right, let's dive into the list. Here's a couple of honorable mentions. On 10th place, we have Kriegshög from Tokyo, Japan. Their second record, Love and Revenge. Their first record came out in 2010, so it's been a while since they put out a full-length record. One of the things I love about music, but maybe punk and hardcore specifically, is the fact that you can listen to it for a lot of different reasons. It's not only about the song or you know, like the songwriting structure or the catchy melody or the big chorus. With punk and hardcore, a lot of times you can listen to just for the sheer aggression of it, for the sheer power of the music. And this is definitely one of those bands where it's like, you know, and I'm saying this is the most complimentary way. There's not a whole lot of finesse. There's not a whole lot of like, you know, like they spent tons of time working on harmonies and the chorus. This is just raw, powerful, crusty, DB hardcore aggression in your face. No frills, no thrills. It's just fucking balls out hardcore. And you know, I love it. I think this record is great. It's just very raw and primitive and hard, just the way I like it sometimes. So if you want to check out some really cool, crusty hardcore played by a bunch of Japanese dudes in leather jackets, I think this is your album. Yeah. On ninth place, we have some Swedish hardcore. PX30 out of Uppsala. A pretty new band. This is their first album, first thing they ever put out, I think. I saw them play opening up for Chain Whip a while back. It might have been one of their first shows. Raw, aggressive, mid-80s type of style Swedish hardcore. If you're into that kind of thing, like Totalitär and maybe especially a band like Rövsvett, then I cannot recommend this record enough. It's funny, it's raw, it's just a wild ride of Swedish hardcore. What's not to like? On 8th place, we have London's own The Chisel with their second album, What a Fucking Nightmare. The scene that's happening in the UK at the moment is quite exciting. These guys, Chubb and the Gang, and tons of other cool music. There's something cool about the fact that it's very British in its DNA, which I really enjoy. You can tell like there's a big difference in specifically maybe what they sing about and the way they approach it. And on this second record, Chisel are really honing in on their sort of hardcore-esque take on the first Cock Sparrow record, which I really like. Great choruses, fucking funny lyrics, really propulsive, and just a really solid banger of a record. And I can't wait to see the Chisel live. One of my favorite record labels of all time is, of course, Revelation Records. I mean, especially when I got into punk and hardcore, they were widely important to me. I collected all their albums. I bought everything on Revelation. I knew everything about all their bands, and I could probably do a whole episode of my favorite Revelation Records releases. In the mid-90s, late 90s, they started doing more post-hardcore and pop punk and maybe stuff that in 90s emo-esque kind of music, and I lost a little bit of interest. But the last couple of years, they released some really good hardcore bangers and piqued my interest once again. And check out good Revelation records coming out. And on the 7th place, we have Planet on a Chain with their third album, Culture of Death. Planet on a Chain is a hardcore band from Auckland and Austin. Very old school, very American. Unlike the Chisel, this has America all over its DNA. Fast, aggressive, wild, funny, cool. I like the singer. It's really, really raw. But it's interesting because when you talk about old school hardcore, there's all these different cycles of old school hardcore. And I hear a little bit of everything in them. So by 1985, I'm going to go deep now a little bit here, nerd out a little bit on hardcore because I love to. By 1985, the first wave of hardcore was done. Your Minor Threats, your Negative Approaches, it was over. And some bands started playing crossover, some bands just went alternative rock, some bands stopped playing punk, and you know, it shifted. And some bands became quirky mid-80s hardcore, which is a favorite genre of mine, that weirdness when hardcore became like a bit more experimental in the mid-80s. And as a reaction to this, towards the late 80s, a whole new school of like old school hardcore kids showed up. I'm thinking about Youth of Today, and you got your Gorilla Biscuits and maybe a band like Bold. Specifically New York hardcore sort of emulated the aggression and the short songs and the early days of the early 80s hardcore. And then that scene of hardcore, like the New York hardcore days of the late 80s, turned into early 90s, and a lot of those bands like Judge, that started as an old school hardcore band, became a bit more new school and a bit more metal, and hardcore drifted slowly into like more metalcore. And then in the mid to late 90s, you had bands like Hands Tied and Floor Punch sort of reacting to it and being like, oh, we're going to play old school hardcore, but their old school hardcore was more a representation of them being into New York hardcore. And in Planet of Shame, I hear a little bit of everything on this. Like maybe the production more sounds like the sort of 90s old school hardcore, but it has a lot of DNA of like, you know, like the youth crew hardcore, because they have the backup choirs and, you know, like the sing-along choruses. But it also has the fastness and rawness of like the early 80s, which is interesting. And maybe I should do an episode of like old school hardcore. What is old school hardcore anyway? Who knows? I've had a fever for like a week, so pardon my ramblings. But this, if you like fast American hardcore, Planet of Chain, I cannot recommend it enough. It's a super cool album. So in sixth place, this is not really a full-length album. It's an EP, but it's fantastic. I'm talking about the new Gel EP, Persona. Maybe it's a little bit compensation because their album that came out last year, that's fantastic, didn't make my list last year because, well, honestly, I didn't own it last year. So I bought it this year. This record's great. That record's great. This EP's great. Gel from New Jersey. Moshy, sort of aggressive, new school type of hardcore. I think her voice is fantastic. I really like it when they do like the half speed, kind of like fast but not fast parts are great. Got a lot of breakdowns, a lot of moshy parts are fucking fantastic and really aggressive. They also did a terrific version of Worms of the Sunset Factory, so the skull on the Shape of Punk obliterated version. And I never seen Gel live, and I cannot wait to see them live. One of the things that dominated 2024 in my musical world was that a lot of old artists put out new records that were just fantastic. And I'm going to talk more about that on the next episode. I'm going to talk about the best records of 2024 that are not punk and hardcore albums. Punk and hardcore also had that. X from Los Angeles put out their 9th and final album, Smoke and Fiction. X been a mainstay in the punk world since, yeah, the early 80s. Their first album, Los Angeles, is from 1980. I love the fact that it's the original lineup. The same people that put out the first record is putting out the last record, and it's great. The playing is great. Billy Soom's guitar playing is fantastic. Exene's and John's vocals are great. Yeah, it's just a really, really cool record. And they didn't put out records for a very, very long time. And then they put out Alphabet Land in 2020, which I really enjoyed. But I think this is a really amazing send-off record. There's a couple of songs like Ruby Church and The Way It Is. They're going to be like on my X mixtape forever, which is super cool. So I cannot recommend this one enough. If you get a chance to see them live, see them live. They're great. I've seen them a couple of times because they're doing their farewell tour as we speak. So thank you, X. You've been a fucking excellent band for a long time, and I'm glad that you put out this wonderful record as your final album. Fourth place, Richmond, Virginia. The Invertebrates, their first record, Sick to Survive. This is just a full-on attack of old school American hardcore. I mean, it honestly does sound like it could be like the second Jerry's Kids record or something like that. Has that vibe, has that energy to it. And if you're into that type of old school American early 80s hardcore, then this is a great record. Also, it's 13 minutes long, so it doesn't really waste your time that much. But yeah, this is fantastic. It's super wild and aggressive, and just drumming's all over the place in the best possible way. So yeah, check it out. All right, we made it to the top 3 records, punk and hardcore of 2024. In third place, we have Amyl and the Sniffers with their third record, Cartoon Darkness. Melbourne band. I love Australian punk rock. I love Australian rock and roll. And I think they hold up the tradition really, really well. It's not as lo-fi and garage as their first record, but it's a magnificent record. It sounds great. Produced by my good friend Nick Launay. I did the Refuse Freedom record. He also mixed a bunch of Invasion tracks. It sounds fantastic. I think the songwriting is great. I think tons of hooks, tons of fun stuff happening on this record. And their brand of sort of garagey punk rock is just, it's fantastic. And yeah, another winner from Amyl and the Sniffers. Just fantastic record. If you follow my YouTube channel over the couple, I don't know how long I've been doing this, like 2 years, something like that. You know that I like raw, violent, disturbing, fucked up music. Not exclusively, of course, but I'm very fascinated by that type of music that makes you kind of feel dirty when you listen to it. And one band that has been with me since my good friend Sam introduced me to them in 2018 is a band called Candy. And their new record, It's Inside You, just came out. It's the second best punk and hardcore record of 2024. It's their third album. They're also from Richmond, Virginia, which is kind of crazy that 2 bands from Richmond, Virginia is on the top 5 list. This is not your typical hardcore record. This is not your typical, I mean, it's not a punk record by any means of the definition. This is violent, aggressive, wild. It has parts of hardcore in it. It has blast beats. Some stuff sounds like early death metal. It has a lot of industry tendencies to it. Like there are songs that sounds like Ministry or even Godflesh. It has samples. I mean, it has Atari Teenage Riot samples, which is fucking wild. And this is just a pummeling attack on your senses. It's noisy, it's raw, it's fucking aggressive, in your face. It doesn't let up. And I just love this record. This is the type of wild and unpredictable aggressive music that I like. If you are into any type of like alternative, aggressive, heavy music, you need to check out Candy. All 3 records are great, but I think this is my favorite one because it's so eclectic. It's all over the place in the best possible way. So yeah, I cannot recommend this record enough. It blows my mind every time I put it on. I'm sure that a couple of these records would have made it onto a regular album of the year list, but I wanted to put punk and hardcore apart and show people just how much great punk and hardcore music there's out there at the moment. One of the records that would made it onto an album of the year list for sure is, of course, the #1 pick of a punk and hardcore for me, and that is, of course, the new High Vis record, Guided Tour. This is an amazing record, High Vis from the UK, their third album, and they just keep bringing out bangers. High Vis is one of those bands that musically, a lot of the stuff in their output doesn't sound necessarily, I mean, it doesn't sound like hardcore. It sounds like Britpop or indie rock or alternative rock, or Even on this record, they have sprinklings of like acid jazz on it, and it doesn't really matter because the power of what they're doing and how they're doing it just feels like, I mean, they're like a hardcore band. Especially after seeing them live, which may be my only complaint, that it's hard to emulate the power that High Vis has live into an album. But that's you know, it's like, it's such a minor complaint because I love this record. I think it's fantastic, one of the best records of the year, hands down. I also love it in a world of what I call post-code hardcore, where a lot of hardcore bands are just kind of bragging about where they're from. High Vis sings about really important political issues, done in a very British way, very Ken Loach-esque sort of in their approach, singing about how them and their friends are affected by the socio-economical circumstances of what's going on in the UK right now. It's wonderful. So without a doubt, my favorite punk and hardcore record of the year, High Vis. What a band. I can't wait to see them live again. They're a fucking fabulous band. And there you have it, the 10 best punk and hardcore records of 2024. What was on your list? What's your favorite hardcore punk record of the year? Let me know in the comments. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that I missed that I want to check out. Next episode is going to be the best album of the year. I'm super excited about this. If I look at the schedule, I'm supposed to do it like 2 days after Christmas Eve or something like that. We'll see about that. It comes out when it comes out. These are weird times. I mean, not weird times in itself, but it's Christmas, it's the holidays, and people are going to be busy. But yeah, the next episode, hopefully in 2 weeks, I'll bust it out, and then I'll give you the best albums of 2024. Thank you for being on this ride with me. Until next time, stay well, my friends. Bye-bye.